Welcome to week number 2 of the Oscar reviews of the feature film categories that were nominated in the documentary, foreign language, and animated categories. Last week we looked at the documentary films. This week we're going to be looking at the films nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, which are Land of Mine from Denmark, A Man Called Ove from Sweden, The Salesman from Iran, Tana from Australia, and Toni Erdmann from Germany. All of these films were nominated this past Oscars for Best Foreign Language Film, with The Salesman being the winner. So that means you know that will be the last review for the foreign language films by the end of this week. So if you remember last week, it would go on the scaling on what was the least likely to win for a lot of people, they think, to what ended up becoming the winner. So today's review would be the least likely film that could have won this. And as you can tell based on this Little League shirt, you know it says Australia. That means I am looking at the film Tana. Now, before I talk about the film, this is actually Australia's first foreign film to be nominated in this category. They had 9 previous films that were submitted in the Best Foreign Language category, but a lot of them did not make the shortlist, except for one, and that was the 2009 film Samson and Delilah. However, it did not get nominated. But then here comes Tana, and here they are, Australia's first nomination in the Best Foreign Language Film category. And the language that is spoken is Navajo. Now this film is specifically a love story that is around an island called Tana. Now if you want to know what Tana is, kind of like last week when I talked about where Lampedusa, Italy was. Now Tana is a small island that is in the Tefe province of Vanuatu. And it's located around the South Pacific Ocean, and it's a few miles away on sea from Australia. And for the island's population, it's somewhere around over 28,000. That's what is said as of 2009, but I don't know how much population is now, but it is somewhere like around 30,000 probably as of this recording. Now the film is directed by Martin Butler and Bentley Dean, and this film is actually based on a very true story of a couple who decided to marry for love rather than obey their parents' wishes. And yes, this is a Romeo and Juliet style, but in real life. Now, there were a little bit differences. Now, one of the girls, which I forgot, one of the girls that is in the film is actually was going to have to force to marry another side from Tana. There are 2 different things. It's kind of like one that is the Capulets, one that is the Montagues. But the girl that is part of like the side that we're focused on a lot in the film falls in love with actually the chief of that side, and it's really kind of difficult to say. That's kind of the reason why this is a little bit of a flaw here. Despite this being a true story, it is still kind of the Romeo and Juliet thing. But it does really show what the island of Tana really looks like of how it is today. It's just the massive amount of shots you see, the cinematography, and it just really shows what it really looks like, from their islands to their villages, and they just have like nothing but pigs. That's it. And for both of their sides to have their equalness together, that's why the girl who has to force to get married doesn't want to do it. And you know how the rest of the film goes, since it is kind of a use of predictability. Now, I don't remember a lot of the names in the film. There's one name in particular that you will remember the most in the film, and that is Céline. That's one of the biggest flaws of the film, is that it doesn't really show much of their relationship, because it almost looks like in a perspective of Céline when you first see it, but then it turns to the second half when you see the love connection goes. But the cinematography and how the visuals tells really does well. Now, the film itself, I thought it was alright. It's definitely not a fantastic film, but it's nice to see that the country that we all know and love from Down Under finally got their first nomination. If you're a person that's into a Romeo and Juliet style that is actually a real-life version of it, this is a film exception. And for the folks down in Australia, since this film got nominated for Best Foreign Language Film, any people who live down in Australia, you're going to have a good time watching this film. So now we take a plane from Australia and go on to our next country, to Denmark.